Okay guys, so in this video I'll be breaking down to you exactly how you can go about briefing your influencers to make high converting creative so you can actually see a solid ROI on your influencer promotions. I'll be sharing with you exactly how we do it and also the template that we use to brief our influencers. Now to start things off, I have to say that this strategy is specifically for paid Instagram or YouTube promotions. It doesn't necessarily apply to organic TikTok videos because that's a completely different strategy. But if you're running a paid ad with someone who already has an audience and you want to convert that audience on a specific product, then this template that we use will probably give you a great understanding on how you should actually structure things and brief your influencers on how to make videos in the first place. So first things first is that you want to give your influencers creative freedom, sort of. What I mean by that is that every influencer has probably spent years or at least a couple of months building up their audience. They know how to speak to their audience, so you don't need to tell them word to word what they have to say. When I first started, I was sending influencers scripts, and what I found out very quickly is that if you send an influencer a script on what to say word to word, they'll sound like a robot, and chances are the promotion will tank just because the influencer isn't being genuine. So it's very important that your influencers are being 100% genuine in their promotions. You shouldn't tell them to say specific stuff word to word because they'll sound like robots. They won't put the words together how they naturally would, and very easily an audience can kind of tell that the influencer is not being genuine. So the way that we do it is that we give influencers guidelines, specific bullet points or specific things that they have to mention throughout the video, which kind of help create the overall structure. But the actual creative itself, as in what they do, what they say, we don't have control over that, or we choose not to control that because we know the influencer will do a better job at being themselves and communicating as themselves than we could tell them. So we don't tell the influencers how to speak or how to be themselves. We let them do their thing, but then we give them specific guidelines, specific things they should be saying or doing throughout the video, or things to mention in general that would help kind of steer the promotion in the way that we want it to go. One very important point here that I learned very quickly is that you don't want to put your idea of normal onto an influencer. What I mean by that is that you might already have a specific assumption in your mind that this is what a good creative or good performing influencer ad looks like. But from my personal experience, that's not necessarily the case. What you think is good and what's not good is not necessarily what's correct. What's good in terms of creative is when the influencer is being genuine and that the audience can tell that the influencer is being genuine. I remember one of our biggest promotions to date, we had an influencer whose accent was kind of hard to understand, and I was going to ask them to redo the creative because it didn't look like she was being herself. The way she was talking was a bit funny. But then when I went through her YouTube channel, she had a YouTube channel and all her previous video posts, I could see that this is actually the way she talks, like she was being herself in the creative, and this is her being genuine. So we went ahead and ran that creative, and it was one of our best promotions to date. So make sure you never force your thinking on what's normal or what's right onto the influencer, because every influencer is different, the way of speaking is different, the way they say certain stuff is different, so don't tell them that this is right and this is wrong. It's all subjective, it all depends on the specific influencer. As long as they're being themselves and the audience can tell that they're being themselves, then chances are the promotion will do much better than if you made them sound like a robot and gave them a word-to-word script. And a good way to check this really quickly is just by looking at the influencers' past videos or YouTube channel, if they do have a channel, and just check if they're actually sounding like themselves in your ad versus their old videos. So like I said, we give influencers specific guidelines and specific bullet points that they have to say throughout the video, but we don't overdo it. We don't give them scripts of sentences of specific lines of text, because that would be pushing it too much. And very quickly the influencer can get over-reliant on the script, which kind of takes away the creative freedom and their own personality from the video, which will reduce conversions because the audience can pretty much see through it. Okay, so what do we actually do? I actually put this template together to show you guys, and this is what we use for our stores and brands, and it usually looks much better than this. I just took away all the colors and the branding just to make it look very simple. Essentially, this is what our structure would look like. So we would send the influencer a link to this Google Doc, and this would outline all the specific things inside the promotion that they need to do or say, and this would kind of build the overall structure on what the promotion should look like. So first thing that's very important is that right at the very top, we would go ahead and link some of our best performing influence ads of the past. And if you don't have this, and obviously it's something you build up over time, but for us we link 2 or 3 or 4 different creatives that have done really well for us in the past, and we give that as a reference for the influencer. Essentially what this does is it gives the influencer a good idea of what works. So it's best if you don't give them just one specific video, because if they see that one video they'll think that they have to make the creative that specific way. But if you give them 2 or 3 variations of different creatives that have worked for you, then the influencer will kind of generate some ideas. They have something to give them a creative spark, and then they can build off their own content from that example. So we always make sure we send a drive link with a few example videos of good performing creatives. Again, this is something you can build up over time. And then what we do at the very beginning, you can see over here, is we add the timestamps of how long a specific section should be and what they should say in that specific section. So you can see the first thing over here, we say that the influencer should start with a personal story or experience. I made a video talking about how you should structure this brief before, but essentially we always make sure we start off the brief, the promotion itself, with kind of a relatable story that the influencer has. And we use that story to kind of hook the audience in, get them interested in the story, and kind of disguise the ad as content, because we don't want people to see it's an ad and then they'll instantly drop off. We kind of disguise the ad as content by building up a story and hooking them in. And then we slowly transition into our product 30 seconds in by basically giving or explaining how the story, which is usually a problem that the influencer has faced, basically the influencer kind of resolved their problem or came to some sort of solution by coming across our product. So that's the way we position it, just to get people hooked in at the beginning and keep them watching through. And then 30 seconds later, this is called all kind of like rough guidelines. That's why we say 30 seconds max, because we don't give influencers specific timestamps or when they should say specific things. We kind of let them be creative with it, but we don't want to go over specific time limits, because we obviously we don't want to make ads super long, because if the ads are super long, people will drop off anyway. So that's why we just say rough. That's why we give rough timestamps over here right at the end. But once we told a story, we hook people in and we explain how our product kind of was a solution to that story or the problem the influencer is facing. Then we go ahead and we unbox the item, we reveal the item, and we do a demonstration with the product. And while the influencer is doing a demonstration, we have certain features over here, and we would go ahead and list out the most popular features or the most unique features about that specific product that the influencer can talk about whilst they're actually doing the demonstration. And then obviously if your product does have some sort of results element to it, so you can actually see how it physically works, then we would go ahead and show the results. It's not possible for all products like jewelry products or clothing products, so you don't have to worry about it for those products. But then after that, we would go ahead and transition into promoting the offer, and we go into the pitch. And the pitch would be a very hard and strong pitch, and this is kind of where we get a bit more specific with the brief. So you can see the pitch section actually makes up about half of the brief, because we have to be really careful that we do this section right, or else the chances are that the promotion won't get many clicks through, and then the promotion won't work. So you have to make sure your pitch is very strong, very hard, and don't be kind of shy with it, because I know loads of people, especially like they see other brands just posting one story slide where the influencer is just showing off the product and not necessarily forcing the audience to click the link or swipe up. And that's basically what derails loads of different promotions, because people are under the impression that you can just get the influencer to show off your product and not necessarily pitch it really strong, and they would still convert. But that's usually not the case. Your influencer has to be really strong on the pitch side, because if they're not aggressive in terms of pitching the product itself, chances are people will just move on to the next story slide. So that's why the brief for the last part, the last section, which is promoting the offer, is quite long. We say specifically what kind of sale that we're doing. So we introduce urgency and scarcity tactics. So the sale ends in the next 24 hours. Then we will add the justification for the sale, which is essentially the reason why the sale is happening. And the reason why we need that is because everyone is doing 50% off, 60% off nowadays. You pretty much see it everywhere. So when you add the justification in, it kind of gives people a logical reason as to why they should buy a product at that specific moment. And once they can kind of reason with themselves at least that, okay, now I have to buy this product, or else I won't be able to get it at this price again. Once they have that logical reason, and they're much more likely to convert. So a justification is really important. We make sure we always justify the reason for the offer during the pitch itself. And we always make sure that we do at least 2 call to actions. So we would say swipe up right at the beginning of the pitch, and we would say right at the end as well. So people were reaffirmed of what the action they should take is. We make sure it's not confusing. We get right to the point. We say you have to buy the next 24 hours if you want this specific price. We don't tag our profile. We don't add hashtags and stuff like that to distract people. We make sure it's very focused. We are pitching specifically one specific product, not to a whole collection. One specific product, we give a discount code on certain occasions. We mention specifically what's a pain point that the product helps resolve and exactly how the influencer has benefited from using the product. And then we pitch it aggressively for at least 15 to 30 seconds. 13 seconds is pretty much the maximum we would go. And obviously we would have the swipe up or the click through link towards the end. Usually we make sure that during the demonstration phase of the product ad itself, the influencer should put up some text on the screen that basically reads out what she's saying. So if we're mentioning a specific feature, we make sure that's put on the screen as well. So audience that didn't kind of understand that specific feature, or maybe she was talking too fast, they can understand different features, or even features that she didn't mention, you can put it as text on the screen so that people get a good idea of exactly what are all the things that the product does. So you can see this is pretty much what a template looks like. It's not something overly complicated, it's not super long as well, especially when you have the examples that the influencer can reference, and it becomes pretty much straightforward for the influencer to make the creative, as long as your brief is clear and it mentions the main features and benefits, just to give them kind of a steering direction on what they should be doing. But your brief doesn't have to be super long. You can see the only place that it's kind of long and kind of loads of words involved is towards the very end here, which is when we're more strict. But the first section where they're actually telling their story, they're showing off the product, talking about the features, we give them more freedom over there, and we only become more strict towards the end of the promotion when we really need people to click the link and actually convert on the offer. And it's very important that if your creatives aren't following the brief that you laid out, that you shouldn't rush like getting the promotion live as soon as possible, which is a mistake that I personally made. Was, influencers would take a long time to actually reply and then set up the deal, and then by the time they actually make the content, it's 2 or 3 weeks later, and at that point you just really want your ads to go live, so you say okay to anything and you just force the ads to go live. But usually this is a big mistake, because if the creatives aren't fully aligned with exactly what you laid out in the brief, even if there's like a few small mock-ups or maybe just the promotion part itself is a bit messed up, chances are that if you're a bit too lenient with bad creative, then your promotion won't do as good as it probably could have, and you're just losing money. So I would recommend never rushing promotions. Make sure you take the time. If the creative itself isn't good, make sure the influencer remakes it. Maybe your brief wasn't laid out right, so you need to change it up a little bit, or maybe you need to get some more example content for the influencer to kind of reference through. But make sure you don't rush in promotions to go live just because you want them to go live and you want things to get going. Take your time with it, because when it comes to influencers, as soon as the ad goes live, there's no changing it. You've paid them. There's no pausing the ad, switching up to creative. It's not like Facebook ads. That creative can only be made one time, so you have to make sure when you make it, it's perfect, it follows the brief. And if it does that, then you'll probably have a much more successful promotion. But that's pretty much it, guys. So I'll make sure I'll link the template that I showed on my screen in the description box down below, so you can use it for any promotions that you do in the future. And just to say this again, this template is specifically for YouTube or Instagram story promotions. This won't work on TikTok because TikTok is a completely different strategy. Maybe I'll put out a video on that later. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. I'll put my handle on the screen there. Or just drop your comments down in the comment section below and I'll get back to you as well. And if you did like the video, make sure you drop a like down below and also subscribe to the channel, because I'm sharing more helpful e-commerce content like this, which you don't want to miss. So make sure you subscribe. I have a full playlist of influencer marketing related videos, so you can go ahead and check my channel playlist and you can see a bunch of helpful videos on how you should actually structure your promotions, how you can find the best influencers, all sort of things that are going to be pretty helpful for you if you want to nail influencer marketing, specifically on YouTube and Instagram. But yeah guys, I hope you found that helpful. I will see you on the next one.
Focused on my business, boss life, academics, tracking progress like Fitbit. Got this office and we killing it. Lifestyle is limitless, got love for life and we live for this.